Hello, friends. We are beginning another program number 20. And wouldn't you know it, I kind of reversed pages 1081 and 1082. So when I was working on program 19, the paragraph immediately before it was this: a cyclic tabulation is of equal interest, but is of a totally different nature, carrying to the initiated and intuitive investigator many hints of an evolutionary and historical value. And with some of those hints, I tried to work as we worked through the last 2 hours of programming. Again, we might append a brief epitome of some of the expressions used and of some of the names under which human beings are grouped in the archives of this 7th department. It's so organized, and nothing is left to chance, I would say. You know, when I saw here that they are grouped by their rhythm, their quality, their heat, their light, their magnetic influence, their radiation, their activity, we're really using those particular descriptors. We might be able to place them within the Egoic Lotus, because all of these things are increasing, of course. The quality, well, the original quality is not increasing. It is what it is, but quality in terms of refinement is increasing. Certainly heat is, light is, magnetic influence is, radiation is, activity is, and I suppose rhythm too, all increasing. And then, of course, this particular introduction would go towards these units that we discussed, units of the fire mist stage, points of lunar origin, etc., etc. But what we're going to look at now is a group of 13. Now, as DK has told us, there are many other types of units with their own types of names. You know, we're just getting a tiny little peek into an area of classification which is understood by this 7th department in hierarchy. Many more names, he says, might be given, but these will suffice to indicate the general nature of these energy summations under which the members of the human family are gathered and placed, and then according to, you know, rhythm, quality, etc. So the ones we're going to study now are we have behind them a classification of this type: rhythm, quality, heat, light, magnetic influence, radiation, etc. We can see that, I think, with the very first one we're going to study. Let's see, I'm going to just put this in. I know this is a bit of a hodgepodge, but you just turn to the pages and you'll see where it all is. I don't know how I got myself out of order here, but I did. But I think you'll still be able to understand. So, you know, redoing a little bit from 1081, it might be of profit and interest if we here enumerated some of the occult terms applied to these differentiated groups. And we see that, I'm saying here that some of these divisions may be monadic divisions, and in some cases may be egoic divisions, but still monadic essentially. I mean, they are monad egos, but what is interesting is the kind of monad that stands behind egoic unfoldment. I mean, you might look at two egoic lotuses differentially unfolded, and behind them might be a different type of monad which has been working for a different amount of time in different ways, and yet from the egoic standpoint, unless we were a high expert in the field, they might look very similar in terms of the degree of their unfoldment. So, as I said, that which is given is profoundly occult and is readily open to accurate interpretation, but of course it does not seem that we can give that kind of interpretation. I think one would have to be a master, and we're just touching upon a few out of a vast number, and only name those terminology of which the terminology of which conveys information to the student. We discussed that already, But we didn't discuss some of these responses to that word, and that means, if the other groups were named, they would not impart any information or educational value to the student. So the more we read in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, the more we do realize that it is a book written essentially in outline form. One kind of wondered when DK had said that he's putting down just a few ideas out of all the vast number of ideas he might put down. So, that may seem strange to us as readers overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Cosmic Fire conveys, but it conveys only briefly what the Tibetan could convey if his objective was even a relatively complete treatment of the subject investigated. So the first group listing, which we're now going to do in second order, seems to be developmental. And the categories seem to be separated hierarchically, with the first named being the lowest in vibratory development, though this may not always be the case. Certainly it is for the very first the very first title, as you will see. In studying the Egoic Lotus closely, there may be reason to believe that the names of the groups correspond to the number of unfolding or unfolded petals in the Egoic Lotus, or perhaps the factor of organization and stimulation may be involved. There's different ways to judge of the degree of development of the petal. Organization is one, the degree of vitalization or stimulation is another. Then comes the degree of unfoldment or opening of the petal. So now this material is going to be new to us. We have not studied it in the previous discussion. So units of inertia. Well, developmentally, you can't get much lower than that. I was thinking that there's a connection with the moon, because the moon, in a way, is associated with the inert lives that have to be acted upon from outside, and this may be associated with the lowest of the creative hierarchies, which is interestingly ruled by Aquarius, at least in this tabulation of creative hierarchies. So the units of inertia and the blinded lives and the baskets of nourishment and all of that seem quite connected, but of course we're talking about man and the degree to which he's responsive to the environment. When it comes to thinking of something like units of inertia, we don't have to say, well, they come from Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, Vulcan, or some other source. It's a developmental stage, and it certainly seems connected with the first petal, I would say, where the responses of man are the slowest, because he's at his most primitive level in terms of engaging with the environment. In terms of the kinds of impacts that could reach him, he's not easily moved. So this is a tamasic group and may correspond to those human beings in whom the first petal of the Egoic Lotus has been unfolding or is unfolded, and the name seems to indicate the low degree to which they are responsive, or the high degree to which they are unresponsive. And what I think is that the lower energies of Taurus and Vulcan may be involved. The first tier of petals can be correlated with the earth signs. Yes, I think so. There is some intransigence, some resistance in Vulcan. It has a later type of immovability and fixity, which is connected with spiritual will, but any planet can be operative, affecting matter at any stage of human evolution. We really don't have to wait for the sacred planets to affect only the highly developed individual. there is a high effect on highly developed individuals, but there is also a lower effect on those who are simply entering and participating. So everything depends upon the form, and all the planets are always present. I do want to say something I did say before, that this can connect to the moon, which interestingly is exalted in Taurus and is associated with Vulcan, as Vulcan veils in lower types, as the moon veils, rather. Moon veils in lower types Vulcan. So, we are average, intelligent humanity, and we're working with aspiration and discipline, and we have come a long, long way through millions of years and many, many lives. Who's to say exactly how many? Because those records, again, are in the department of the hierarchy. It's not like we are consistently in incarnation. It will depend on soul ray cycles, and maybe other kinds of cycles related to the kind of root race in which we are functioning, or sub-race, and so forth. So there's all kinds of in and out information connected with our incarnational history, and we will have to be true members of hierarchy before we know that. In assessing what Master DK has given us, as you go further with it, you begin to realize what he hasn't given us. And of course, what he has not given us, and wisely so, is vast compared to what he has given us. Because, our issue here is assimilation and real understanding. So we're doing well to understand and assimilate what has been given, and then doing that properly, even our intuition will begin to work and tell us what has remained unsaid by him to us. So the units of inertia, operating pretty much in the first petal, and I would say, let's say, connected with those in whom the spark of mind has not been implanted. They must wait for another time to go much further with their evolution. And we know sometime in the fifth round their opportunity will come, and it's also interestingly the case for that form of individualized being that is imprisoned in the form of the anthropoid ape, at least according to occultism. A very strange kind of history related there to the sin of the mindless. Just about impossible to explain to the average intelligent man of the world. It seems so fanciful. But once one has accepted the authenticity of the secret doctrine, its amazing source and amanuensis, then it becomes easier to accept many of the things that, at least hypothetically, that seem fanciful to many people. Now remember, what has been what have we had here? We have we have a kind of an idea here that certain words, atoms, units, flames, I'm leaving points, specks, and others. All of these terms suggest the monad. Every unit of life, even the soul, even the entire cosmos is in a way at any one time the atom. So we have to ascend and descend the scale of analogy to understand the language that is used here in occultism. It's not a limited use of language as we find when we try to work strictly with a concrete mind. We must remember that the human being is, in the terminology of cosmic fire, essentially an atom, okay? And so is a planetary logos, and so is a solar logos, and so is the atom of substance. Those are the four levels, four atomic levels that are offered in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, and their comparisons are most interesting, because what is not said of one may be or what is said of one may be implied of another. So we can fill in the blanks by studying the parallels. And when something is said of the atom of substance, one may be able to find the way, not always with utter exactitude, of what is true of a higher atom, and vice versa. I found myself doing that quite a bit, and there are certain tabulations where one sees that he is basically filling in the parallels for each atom. Of the three earth signs, Taurus, ruled by Venus, is the sign most reasonably associated with the second petal. I've given as well as saying that the first three petals are Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and some other ways of looking at it too, which I'll explain, namely Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, and also Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, because he seems to begin the progress through the zodiac in three different ways, and the Egoic Lotus is really a zodiac. It's a miniature, a developmental zodiac, indicating the evolutionary stage and process of the human being, and maybe, when we look at lotuses of other and higher beings, indicating their process as well. Are all of them 12-fold? Well, not necessarily. There's some kind of 21-fold structure related to the solar logos, but also a 12-fold structure. So again, we need time for clarification. So Taurus, ruled by Venus, is the sign most reasonably associated with the second petal. And there's also much of Libra, also ruled by Venus. Taurus, Libra, and Venus are all conducive to the development of rhythm, oscillation, hammer strokes, and the way beauty emerges through the right use of rhythm. We can see this especially in the oscillatory activity of Libra and the repetitive behavior of Taurus, Taurus Vulcan. Now, have I said anything here about, yes, maybe I have. We seem to be dealing with an oscillation which leads increasingly to the focusing of the self. Atoms of rhythmic centralization. You know, in what way do we have to centralize? We have to be aware of this something within our field of consciousness, which we, over many millions of years, identify as the center of self. So perhaps this oscillation leads to this gradual focusing on this center. Perhaps there's a growing sense of the self at the center of experience, and this apprehension is appreciated not consistently, but rhythmically. You know, there is always this kind of duality that occurs. There's a fluctuation, there's an ebb and a flow, there are tides, outgoing and ingoing, and so forth. So there is never a consistent application of energy with utterly the same intensity without respite. There is application, and then a pulling back, and then application and a pulling back. Sometimes this is called the power that touches and then withdraws, and it's related to the first ray. So maybe now, well, even now, you kind of wonder about our appreciation of our own center, our own sense of I. We can get lost in experience, lost in the moment, forget the I entirely, which may be a good thing in some ways. But it's not that we always appreciate the eye. Even let's just say that given the rhythm of the full moons, there's maybe a deeper appreciation on those rhythmic cycles of what it is I really am, a unit of being consciousness, than at other times. And maybe it intensifies every full moon. Or maybe in the day it intensifies every meditation period and then kind of dissipates for a while. So if the group opening or having opened the second petal is indicated, and I'm not sure the complete opening is indicated, this greater realization of the self at the center is accompanied rhythmically by the recognition of the self of others. In other words, here's the idea here. In the second petal, at least, there is a departure from the primitive instinctual selfishness and some application of the idea of love, or the experience of love. That's what he will tell us when we go to approximately page 539 here. He'll say something of that nature. Maybe just a little later, the 540s. He'll say, the petal of love for the physical plane unfolds through physical relationship and the gradual growth of love, from love of self to love of others, very gradually, because these earlier petals can take, millions of years to unfold. It's almost like one petal per root race, starting from Lemuria. And that also, it gives the idea that the second petal is Atlantean and the third petal is actually Aryan, but maybe not indicating the highest aspect of the Aryan race, which is the fifth. When I say Aryan, I'm talking about consciousness, you understand, not about the physical form. The fifth petal of the lotus might indicate the true development of the Aryan. He's a highly intelligent and creative, self-conscious being. Maybe the first initiation takes us to Aryan stage of development, and then the second to the sixth root race. In other words, the second initiation, and the third initiation has some sort of connection with the seventh root race. But of course, there are still higher types of development connected with the sixth and seventh root races, having to do with intuition for the sixth root race and Atma for the seventh root race, spiritual will. It's such a magnificent plan when you begin to look at it in terms of the unfolding cycles, and it just must be an amazing thing what the planetary logos went through in his meditation before beginning to establish this planet. A great meditative period precedes the actual movement into activity of a planetary scheme. And all of this has to be pre-meditated, pre-conceived, and we're in the working out of it right now, but the divine plan in some measure reveals the thinking of the planetary logos, the meditative thinking, and it also, in a deeper sense, reveals his purpose, which is all about the design. So there is that departure here, rhythmic departure, self, others, others, self, and so forth. And there is gradually in this rhythm a centralization in understanding who we are, ourselves, and what others are. So the sense of the other is required if there's going to be love, and there is love in the second petal. The dual forces of the astral plane, the ebbs and flows of desire energy, seem also to be indicated. This is the petal in which powerful emergence of the astral body is to be seen, and it takes a long time, and really even the fifth human group out of the 10 is considered to be largely emotional, though working in, I suppose, in a sense, organizing and seeing vitalized the third petal of mind. But all the way through the fifth group, there's a lot of this fifth human group there is considerable emotional intensity. And after all, we do live in a astral-Buddhic solar system within the body of a Logos who has only taken the second initiation, in a sense an initiation of the threshold, and so is not a sacred solar Logos. His cosmic mental polarization is now in process of being achieved, and all of us are affected by the essentially sentient emotional focus of the solar Logos. Is there anything else here to say? Well, it's the rhythm now is working constructively. And in the units of inertia, you had tough problem getting the rhythm going because this is an unresponsive group, a basically unresponsive group. Not so for group 2. The rhythm that they have established, and perhaps is a result of response to different ebbs and flows, is helping them centralize their consciousness. Okay, now units of primary radiation. That word primary can mean related to primitive, related to first things. It's also related to one's monad, the primary ray. But in this particular case, we might be getting a hint here because there is a group that we have studied in our approach here, which is called the primary lotuses. So the very first tier of petals is it's the primary tier. It comes first and signifies the earliest threefold developmental phase of man, a phase associated with Brahma, the third aspect, rather than Vishnu. So, in one sense, radiation from any and all of the, or at least the collection, because it is the third, the collection of the three petals might be considered units of primary radiation. They have somehow developed, if not completely, at least to some extent, a representative radiation from all three of the petals. You see what I'm saying here? This is the primary tier. The knowledge tier is primary. Knowledge is always the forerunner of love. And the greater the knowledge, if held within balance and not allowed to become distorted, the more intelligently one can later love. Sometimes those who love spontaneously have to go back and regain the knowledge so that their love can become more intelligent. So, and now I'm going to elaborate on what I was just saying. Interestingly, certain egoic lotuses with an extraplanetary origin arrive on our Earth with the first and third petals well in the process of, well, maybe it's unfoldment or opening, and they are called primary lotuses. For them, however, the second petal is not at all unfolded. As a matter of fact, it is, and the word the Tibetan use, shut. So there's so much work to do there. They've come to this planet with its second ray soul in order to stimulate the number 2 within their lotus development. And this seems to have something to tell us about the fact that from other planets, the egoic lotuses must be at least somewhat similar so that they can undergo sequentially a type of evolution on our planet that they might have undergone on their own. In other words, their petal, their second petal, they came here with the second petal shut, but it was the second petal. And they came from where? From Vulcan, or there's some Mercury connection, but I think Vulcan is a good possibility. And the lotuses conceived on Vulcan, or generated by whatever means on Vulcan, are similar enough to the egoic lotuses generated on Earth to undergo a type of development which is similar. I suppose it has something to do with the kind of solar system we're in, and that these 12-petaled sunflowers, radiant solar flowers, in some way are reflecting the second ray and the 12-foldness of our solar logos, related to the heart center, and thus to the second ray, and 12 being the related to Pisces, the 12th sign, and thus strongly to the second ray. Pisces may be really the major second ray sign affecting our whole solar system as a cosmic decanate connected with the second ray. So the primary lotuses emphasize the third petal with which they are equipped, and their task is to work on the unfoldment of the second. And so is DK indicating that the units of primary radiation have reasonable unfoldment in all three of the first tier of petals, and are thus beings who can act, feel, and think in the process of completing the first primary of the three developmental phases in the unfoldment of the egoic lotus. Is that what he's saying? Or is he somehow hinting in a strange way, or is he somehow hinting that the monadic units, which come in as primary lotuses, are, in fact, and what do you call them here? The units of primary radiation. Well, it seems very clear that we're not out of that first tier of petals. DK gave us the names of certain lotuses of the first circle, and then he gave us names for lotuses of the third circle, it seems to me, radiant lotuses, lotuses with perfume, and lotuses of revelation. It didn't seem like he has really given us the same kinds of names for lotuses of the second circle. But, that has yet to be clarified. So let's just say that the first circle is the primary circle, and we're not going to say that someone with one petal open is a unit of primary radiation. It's true that the first petal is a member of the primary circle, or that units of the that have the first and second petal on the point of opening, are units of primary radiation. It seems to require some representation of all the petals, or may be used in a specialized way to indicate those who are working on and organizing the second petal, but it is not unfolded. So if one is looking here, the primary lotuses have unfoldment going on in petal 1 and 3, and organization going on and vitalization going on in 2, but it still remains in a shut state. And they are still ignorant. They are still working in the hall of ignorance. They may be increasingly intelligent, even more intelligent than the lotuses of passion and desire, which is the fifth of the named groups of the lotuses of the first circle. We have the bud lotuses, Brahmic lotuses, lotuses of Brahman, primary lotuses, and then lotuses of passion and desire. So even though, in a way, it comes before the lotuses of passion and desire, from the mental point of view, it is more highly developed. Excuse me. And but still working in the hall of ignorance, which means, as I've tried to emphasize, ignorance of the higher of the pairs of opposites. It doesn't mean ignorance in the sense of possessing no knowledge. There's much knowledge. Well, here's another one of these, at least in the sons of heavy rhythm. Are these in, sounds like hard rock, sounds like Metallica or something. At least there is rhythm. Let's put it that way. And with units of inertia, there is not. At least there is rhythm, and with units of inertia, There is not. There's just the question of whether you can stimulate the units of inertia to action, but the heaviness has to do again with the Brahmic aspect. So what is really indicated by this name? It seems to indicate those who are rather further advanced than the units of inertia. But we could wonder, reading this fourth name, if it is profitable to consider these graded groups as related to sequential unfoldment. I mean, in other words, are we really looking at a sequence here? We could speculate that we are, with number 1 and 2 being the least advanced and going on, but this seems to indicate maybe less development than units of rhythmic centralization, maybe, and maybe less development than units of primary radiation. Because this particular name doesn't seem indicative of much unfoldment, but because later names are more convincingly indicative of sequential unfoldment, we can retain our hypothesis, thinking that it may have something of value to offer. Again, there seems to be, the Taurian Vulcanian indication. We must remember the moon, too, is one of our greatest symbols of rhythm. It's absolutely the rhythmic vision in our sky. It is the timekeeper of the month, the waxing and waning phases. The fourth petal can be, with reason, associated with Cancer, yes, and with the moon, and is the last of the strictly lunar petals. It must be admitted, however, when one begins to look at what the fourth petal can offer, that this idea of heaviness is not among the offerings. Even higher mind is discussed, as we shall see in the 820s, in relation to the fourth petal. So there's no reason to suspect that those who are focused in this petal and its processes should exhibit a rhythm which is any heavier than the rhythm exhibited by the earlier three groups. And we do get the sense that the rhythm expressed is stronger than that in the case of group 2. There may be a beating out of some kind of impact here. Something there's fashioning, some kind of fashioning in matter. We begin to think, of the blacksmith and forging, perhaps. And the heavy rhythm, when a blacksmith is pounding away at the metal on the anvil, it is a heavy, and it's not really a fast rhythm. It's not da-da-da-da-da, it's a slower rhythm. So the fourfold personality elemental is indicated at this fourth petal. And the personality with its rhythms resistant to solar life can be considered a factor which forces energy to descend below the diaphragm. We look at rays and initiations on page 10, and we'll see how the personality elemental forces the energies in the energy system below the diaphragm. So the names of these groups are so occult that we can only offer possible hints as to their meaning. The true reasons for their names must later be revealed or fathomed by acute intuition, and I'm not always feeling that my intuition is so acute, but there are moments, and perhaps various of us, as we work and study in these pages, will have that flash which will reveal. So no doubt Master DK had a rhythm for listing these groups in this order. It's interesting about the fourth ray let's see, they achieve often by means of rhythm. If we look at Letters on Occult Meditation, somewhere maybe around page, let's try around page 17. Page 18, no, here it is, page 17. We're talking about the methods of destroying the causal body. And its exponents develop along the line of music, rhythm, and painting. See what I'm saying? So the idea of the four connected with Taurus, with rhythm, with Vulcan, which has a strong 4 in it, and the moon, which is said to convey the 4th ray, however it does so, being a dead planet. But the exponents of the 4th ray develop along the line of music, rhythm, and painting. And they withdraw within in order to comprehend the life side of the form. That meditative process is so important if that which they create is to have the life, to be living, to be attractive, to be inspiring. The outer manifestation of that life side in the world is through that which we call art. What an amazing definition of art. The manifestation of the life side in the world. So, anyway, my purpose was to link the 4, which is so lunar, so Taurian, so Vulcanian, with rhythm. That's what I wanted to do. So the sons of heavy rhythm, well, you know, they're going to be working in matter, and their rhythm eventually, their ability to apply rhythm in a heavy and impactful way, a heavy and impactful way will make its impression upon matter and will eventually bring beauty into matter. But it's not easy wielding force. I'm reminded of these people who do metal sculpture. You know, what it must take in terms of the Vulcanian blowtorch and all that to get it all together. And those people who really work in stone, what a heavy impact there must be as they work with rhythm and force in the densest of the materials. The implication of the term, however, does not really seem to take us out of the realm of ignorance and the realm of Brahma and the realm of preoccupation with the 5 senses. But, you know, we have to ask yourself, is heavy rhythm the same as slow rhythm? The ideas seem to go together when slow and heavy, you know. But maybe not necessarily so. Maybe great impact is suggested. And maybe the ability to forge. Again, it would seem to require physical force, which is coming from the base of the spine, and maybe from the first petal, I mean, because no abilities that are developed in these petals are lost. They are retained as one goes on and develops further abilities, and also the mentality to know what one is doing. So you kind of wonder about primary lotuses. They do seem rather more intelligent than something called the sons of heavy rhythm, but we do seem to be working in the outer sphere, and the rhythm would have a purpose. It doesn't seem to be suggested here, but let us say this rhythm will have a purpose, at least eventually. And we can understand that gradually one might develop into a sun of sensitive vibratory response. Later let's call it sun, a sun of sensitive vibratory response, something like that. Okay, we are progressing here for sure. Every once in a while, you know, they do seem to call you and want to talk to you, so the best way is to get out of Skype entirely. Okay. So what I'm saying here is that there is a real progression here. Look how we've jumped. We've jumped. It's almost as if he does not say so much about the units that work through the love petals especially. We have names for lotuses that require initiation, and initiation is the application of the energy of the rod to the inner group of petals, not the inmost, but the inner sacrifice petals. And then he gives us names for lotuses of the first circle. Well, he seems to be jumping here again. If these are points of fiery excellence, a name oft given to magnetic, highly evolved types, we could wonder that if one is magnetic, highly evolved, one has maybe taken initiation and is active with the sacrifice petals. So this leap is a great leap from vibratory state number 4 into that of 5. So if the presentation of the group is so it seems sequential and progressive, have some groups been omitted between group 4 and group 5 because they relate more to man as he is. Now, I don't know if the Tibetan would have a good reason for leaving out names, but I have thought that in naming the lotuses, he left out some names of the lotuses which are organizing and unfolding, opening in the second tier. And here it seems that these monads have taken a leap too. He mentioned the advanced lotuses, 3 kinds of advanced lotuses, radiant with perfume and lotuses of revelation. So will it be possible then to correlate this 5th group with the first group of radiant lotuses? After all, the 5th petal corresponds to the radiant and magnetic sign Leo. And it is at the 5th petal that the radiant solar influences of the solar angel begin to demonstrate noticeably. The solar angel becomes a downward-gazing soul, right? What's it called? Downward-gazing soul. So are we into the Leonian petal? And then would sons of heavy rhythm have to do with the personality's rhythm, which is considered heavy, and therefore relate to work in the 4th petal? Well, rhythm is related to the number 4. We'll just have to defer complete understanding and just offer some hypotheses here. So the radiant lotuses, it seems to me, when you're working, organizing in petal number 7, the 5th petal completely opens, and you become a genius, or potentially, he says, when 2 of the love tiers are open, you become potentially the genius. Of course, it implies quite a bit of knowledge work in the 7th petal, I suspect. So maybe it's number 5. A fully unfolded 5th petal indicates an initiate of the 1st degree, and that initiation also being ruled particularly by Leo, right? Radiant Leo, when found either as the sun sign or the rising sign of the individual horoscope, which he tells us in esoteric astrology. So we really have no idea whether DK is preserving a strict hierarchical order in the presentation of these groups and their names. There are some indications he is doing so, but other group names leave doubts or raised doubts. Can't have both, right? What'll it be? Raised doubts, let's say. So we are coming to realize that man is an atom, a unit, a point, a sun, a flame, a spark. Let me add the words sun and spark here. I wonder where that is. I've wanted to, it's probably up here quite a bit. Okay. We'll add this here. Sun, spark. These are all monadic terms. And of course, not to forget essence. This is the limitation of our language, trying to describe what should only be seen, really, to be understood. So all these terms give important hints about the essential nature of man, the monad, and to a certain extent as an ego on the higher mental plane. So what are these points of fiery? They have achieved. They have merit. They have done much evolutionary work, millions and millions of years of it. They might even, be also from the moon chain or even from the previous solar system, but having achieved that stage where they are, certainly advanced man and highly magnetic, and if they're magnetic, they're using this power very much of the second tier and maybe especially of the fifth petal, because the fifth petal is a double rose, we realize, and the fifth petal has the most magnetism in the second tier of petals. So I tend to want to associate this type of monad with the fifth petal, and it sounds to me like the fifth petal has been unfolded. So is this a high type as well? Tertiary points of secondary fire. That's interesting. So, immediately I think of the sixth petal, but let's just see. And maybe I discussed it around down here, but does this mean the sixth petal? Well, secondary fire is what? Well, let's just see what is said here in blue, which I wrote at an earlier time, but find it convenient to expand upon. So this particular group name fits well with the petal hypothesis we've been using, namely that there is a sequential approach here in the laying out of the petals. Sons of heavy rhythm, well, is it really possible that the personality rhythms are just so heavy in the sight of the soul that even those in the fourth petal or working in the fourth petal can be, working at the integration of the personality elemental can be considered sons of heavy rhythm? That would maintain the sequential hypothesis. So secondary fire may be, I think in this perspective, be considered solar fire. Primary fire, well, it depends on which way you look at it, but possibly fire by friction. And tertiary fire, maybe electric fire. Or it could be the reverse way, but always secondary fire will be solar fire. So it's the type of fire which undergoes expression and development, the development and expression in the second tier of petals, the Egoic Lotus, okay, beloved petals associated with the astral plane. So we may offer a hypothesis then that tertiary points are found in relation to the third petal in any tier of petals. So tertiary points of primary fire, tertiary points of secondary fire, tertiary points of tertiary fire, which would be third-degree initiates. And that correspondingly the secondary points would be associated with the second petal and primary points with the first petal. So this is, an idea of how this type of language may be used to indicate a particular petal. So the manner in which the term primary is used in relation to the third group would be different than indicated in this hypothesis. It just depends which way we are going, These are tertiary points, so they're found in a third petal. And primary fire, is that the fire of the outer tier? Maybe. Or should it be considered tertiary fire? It depends on how we do it. But I think the tertiary points are always related to the third petal, and with the word primary, it does seem so related to primitive and primal and first, that we can use the word primary in relation to the third tier, and tertiary maybe in relation to the, Yeah, primary in relation to the first tier, which gives us the third aspect. And tertiary in relation to the third tier, no, which gives us the third, yeah. And tertiary in relation to the third tier, which gives us the first aspect. You know, there's always this interesting interplay between 3 and 1, and there is a line of expression between them. So we may offer the hypothesis here that we're talking about a third petal in the second tier. And so indeed we may be speaking of the sixth petal, one in whom this second, the sixth petal is unfolding, and that's going to lead us, this will lead us to the second initiation. My hypothesis, at least, based on various references and, an overall look at this thing, is that when the sixth petal is unfolded completely, you have work going on in the eighth petal, but it is the second initiation. And so that would give some kind of idea if you were to look out in the lotus field of the average esoteric student who has not taken the second initiation yet, even with DK's students not having taken the second initiation yet, what these lotuses would look like. The types found expressing in relation to petal 5 and petal 6 are fundamentally different. So through the fifth petal, genius, radiant, and even spectacular, colossal, may be expressed, and through the sixth petal, contrition, humility, drastic self-disciplining, all of those corrections, type of corrections of that which transpired in the fifth petal. So you have a long time to do it, too, because between the first and second initiation, that is, between the complete opening of the fifth petal and the complete opening of the sixth, from my way of thinking, you can have 30 lives. If it corresponds to the lives of the Master Jesus, maybe less in some cases, but a large number of lives elapse between these two openings. So that tells us a lot of work is being done up there in the eighth petal, which will contribute to the opening of the sixth. And then, of course, the application of the rod of initiation, that forcing process, will not only stimulate to unfolding the eighth petal, but will bring the sixth petal into fuller expression. Okay, so tertiary points of secondary fire. And, it might almost be said that many students of occultism find themselves at this developmental stage. Now, so many more people think that they are approaching the second initiation than actually are. There's a long span in there, and just because you have something in sight doesn't mean that it is imminent. I'm sure that such an impressive sense of time will dawn on us when we can see the entire, our entire evolution sequentially unfolding as the Buddha did. And we'll realize, how long, relatively, some of these unfoldments actually do take. Okay, tertiary points of secondary fire. Magnetic flames given to chelas. Notice we're into the, you don't even use the chela before the word chela before you're an initiate of the first degree, and initiates of certain degrees. And, what struck me here when I was considering these is that one can think of the lotuses with perfume, the second type of developed lotuses indicated by DK. We have taken that leap, and the monads that are really expressing magnetism, well, it seems to be a step up from the place where highly magnetic, highly evolved types in point 5. It seems to be a step up. And it seems that perfume and magnetism really go together. We even know from our ordinary life the effect of perfume. It's extremely, well, if it's not repulsive, it's certainly attractive. Different fragrances will attract or repel according to one's type, and some are inherently rather odious and would be, if there can be colors that are used by the negative forces, there can certainly be perfumes which are basically intoxicating and which make one lose one's mental focus. That's something that has to be fought through in the process. Also, seductive music has to be fought through, the music that weakens. The Greeks had these ideas, but they came from somewhere. So one thinks of the lotuses with perfume, the second type of developed lotuses, as perfume is so much involved with magnetism. The third tier of petals includes 3 petals to which the rod of initiation is applied, or if not applied, or if not directly applied, its energy is directed towards the petal. And their unfoldment signifies the taking of the first 3 initiations, which are, from one perspective, considered major. At least they are the major monastic initiations. And my guess is here that none of these 3, even though the rod is applied, is fully unfolded until the 3rd initiation is taken, and that will be the time for the opening of all. So the emphasis is upon the expression of solar fire as dominant over fire by friction. And these magnetic flames, we might be able to apply them to initiates of the 2nd degree. And the question is, can we apply them to initiates of the 3rd degree? How far in the initiatory process can the application of this name be applied? Can the application of this name be used, let us say? Certainly, in relation to initiates of the 2nd degree, and maybe the 3rd, we will see. Magnetic flames. One does not lose one's magnetism when the 3rd petal unfolds. It's only increasing. But we can see certainly a progression between monadic type 5, 6, and 7. There's not, when you talk about 5 and 7, they have quite dramatic names, don't they, you know. Magnetic flames, that's dramatic. And the 5th one is points of fiery excellence. Whenever you talk about fire, it has a certain magnetism to it. When you talk about tertiary points of secondary fire, it's a kind of intellectual language. It doesn't necessarily describe the condition of the being who is unfolding the 6th petal. It's not so fierily attractive as the names for group 5 and 7, but I do think they are sequential. Now we're getting into something here with the positive sons of electricity, which seem to be moving beyond the 2nd aspect. We're talking about not a neutral or the central form of electricity, or we're not talking about negative electricity either. We're talking about positive sons of electricity, and the nucleus is what seems to be suggested. So we have the sense that the nucleus of the egoic lotus is gaining in power, and some degree of electric fire is in demonstration. So they can use, I would say, you know, that the petals of synthesis, PTLO, let's see, synthesis petals are disclosing the positive nucleus. Now, this they do from the 1st initiation on, after the third initiation, this disclosure is more rapid. So, we could have said sons of positive electricity, but it says positive sons of electricity. Is there a hint in that form? But, it seems to me that, let's look at the next name. Yeah, well, it seems to me that the third initiation has been taken, because the disclosure of the egoic, of the central fire, of the jewel in the lotus, the nucleus, the electric nucleus, which is the representation of the positive monad in the midst of the egoic lotus, is not really occurring in a dramatic sense until the third degree, when the individual becomes more influenced and aware of the monad. So let's say here, the individual is much more influenced by and aware of the monad. We're told that we don't really know much about what the monad is until we've taken the third degree. Now, what I said earlier is that we may infer that the rod of initiation is applied to the eighth petal at the second initiation, applied or directed. It is to be noted that at this initiation, the divine will, the factor of positivity within man, enters fuller expression. Desire in its lower aspect is overcome, and I don't know why I held back here in my description. From one perspective, this type seems to be going beyond the second degree and indicates the third degree and its development within the synthesis petals. But anyway, we know that the nucleus of man is being applied. Let's see some of these other names. Rotating units of the seventh order, points of light of the fourth progression. Okay. Electric sparks. Units of negative resistance. Although it's, it's placed in a way that one thinks it has to be an elevated type. The equilibrized atoms. Yes. Ready for destruction. Just trying to get the sense of what's coming. So here we have rotating units of the seventh order. This is occult and difficult to explain. Difficult to explain in this context. Rotary motion, of course, is of the third ray, and the seventh order is an aspect of the third order. So the factor of rotation is important for various points in the development process of the egoic lotus. Right. Tiers of petals begin to rotate, and at one point, the following occurs. And this may be related. At least the idea of rotation of the tiers is brought forward. Each circle of petal becomes, as evolution proceeds, likewise active and revolves around the central jewel, so that we have not only the activity of the petals, not only the activity of the living points of Deva lives within the petal circumference. That's such an important statement, because, he's basically calling Devas points, and really every living being is a point, if you think about it carefully. But likewise, the unified activity of each tier of the threefold lotus. At a specific stage of evolution, prior to the opening of the central veiling bud, there is some unfoldment. The question is the real bursting open. The three tiers of petals, considered as a unit, begin to revolve so that the entire lotus appears to be in motion. Now, what is the direction of the revolving? Well, I've discussed that in terms of the petals and the problem that it seems that the sacrifice petal seems to be progressing in the opposite direction, but there is the sense in what we're going to read that all the 9 petals will be moving in the same direction. So we have that apparent contradiction to deal with. At the final stages, the central circle of petals opens, revealing that which is hid, and revolves around the jewel only in the contrary direction to the rapidly circulating outer lotus. And I'd just like to insert the idea here that the rotation of our planet and its revolution around the sun occur in the opposite direction to the gyration of its axis, which produces the precessional ages. So we have a kind of analogy here of, in the planet, two types of, you have a type of planetary rotation and also a kind of revolution which goes on in the same direction as the rotation. So that's the third and second aspect, but the first aspect has to do with the gyration, which seems to move in a clockwise order, strangely, with the others moving counterclockwise. So anyway, the reason may not here be revealed, for it is hid in the nature of the electric fire of spirit itself, and so the higher initiations having to do with electric fire will show the reason, will reveal the reason. Higher initiations having to do with electric fire will reveal the reason. So are these then lotuses in which rotation is occurring? And of course the seventh order is enigmatical. We don't have many sevens connected with the egoic lotus. Are there rotating units of the first order? And so, I mean, could the seventh have something to do with the opening of the seventh petal and rotation beginning then? Because there's going to be rotation perhaps of the outer tier, and then of the next tier, and then of the next tier, and it may not all enter the process of rotation simultaneously. As a matter of fact, I think it doesn't. Unified activity of each tier. The three tiers of petals considered as a unit begin to revolve, so that the entire lotus appears to be in motion. So that's a but you begin to wonder whether there is a rotation, a sequential rotation of 1, 2, and 3, and then all together. So is there a sequential rotation of tier 1, tier 2, and then tier 3, and all together? At the time that all are rotating together, the third initiation would have to be passed. For the final stage, the third initiation, let's get that, would have to be passed, because you're not going to have the petals, the tiers of petals opening, the third tier petal, until the third initiation has been achieved. Okay. So this seems to be occurring, I suppose, around the time of the third initiation. Let's just say maybe the first and second tiers lock in together and rotate after the second initiation, but for all three to rotate together, the third initiation would be required, because you need the full opening, because the full opening must occur of the tier. And the full opening of the third tier doesn't occur until the third initiation. And let's just say that we're getting pretty close to the fourth initiation if the counter rotation is shown. If the counter rotation is shown involving the opposite rotation of the petals of synthesis, well, why don't I'm going to do one of my things here, you know. I'd like to be able to write that just the way it should be written, so I'm going to say petals of synthesis, and there they are. Okay. Involving the opposite rotation of the petals of synthesis, we are very close to the fourth initiation. Yes. Okay. But then what does the next group tell us? Okay. Well, maybe I have a bit more to suggest. After the ninth petal is fully opened, at the third degree, there develops a unified revolution of the three tiers around the central jewel. Okay. Or the central unit. Here, I'll do it this way. Central jewel and let's call it central unit, because often the three inmost petals and the jewel are considered together as a unit. Perhaps this tier rotation commences as the various synthesizing petals are gradually opened up. Maybe. Because the rotation of three together is a synthetic motion. Yes, indeed. Perhaps the rotation of all three tiers, including the lower 9 petals, is not fully achieved until all three synthesizing petals are seen rotating in the contrary direction as indicated above, and this is at the period of the fourth initiation. We're just dealing in generalities here. We cannot say exactly when. And we can understand that these tier rotations would correspond to certain inner cycles, which would have a demonstrable outer effect within the personality, which still exists until the fourth degree is completely taken. Then if we have a personality, it's interiorly generated. While the seventh order remains for us obscure, and I tried to relate it to the seventh petal, which tells us about a time when there is the beginning of unfoldment of the sacrifice tier and the beginning of the opening of the inmost petals, but I'm not sure it's really a good connection. It's the only 7 we've got. There is, however, suggested the completion of form. 7 completes the form. The form of the egoic lotus is completed at the 4th degree. All 9 petals are open, but so are the 3 synthesizing petals. See, initiates of the 4th order, well, they are 4th degree initiates. We're not dealing with 7th degree initiates here. So this still remains obscure. You kind of wonder, what does it say here? Units of the 7th order. You kind of wonder whether when a particular petal is unfolded, the name order is not applied to that type of individual. A unit of the 7th order, unit of the 8th order, unit of the 9th order, having to do with the unfoldment of petals. We could wonder about that. Could the term order apply to the unfoldment of the various petals? So a full initiate of the 3rd degree would be a unit of the 9th order. But this is strictly speculative. We'll have to learn more before it's possible to be definitive here. When we deal with the factor of rotation, the number 3 is brought to mind, rotary motion, right? For the 3rd ray rules the factor of rotation, or let's call it by the name that is commonly used, rotary motion, even as the 2nd ray rules the factor of revolution, and the 1st ray the factor of pulsation and also of driving forward. Sometimes DK seems to connect the 1st ray with spiral cyclic motion, but it's more that onward movement that causes the spiral cyclic motion. So the 3rd initiation incidentally suggests a summation of one phase of the 3rd aspect of divinity, and is from a certain angle related to the 3rd ray, indeed, even though the 5th ray is that which is applied and the 1st aspect comes into sight. So the third initiation suggests a summation of of the third aspect of divinity related to the 9 petals, because and the third ray, the third ray's number is 9. So when 9 are fully unfolded, something about the third aspect is completed. We are dealing here with a kind of 9th group. So, this has been our speculation regarding rotating units of the 7th order, showing the completion of the third phase. We don't know if this type, maybe there is no counter rotation yet, but only the rotation of the 9 petals, seemingly all in the same direction. Which would be what? I mean, if we relate it to what happens with the Earth, it would be counterclockwise with the inmost tier eventually rotating clockwise. Of course, if you change your angle of vision, everything changes in your assessment of direction. There was a friend who had fought in World War II, and he knew the swastika was rotating in the counterclockwise direction, forgetting, of course, that astrology brought forward the prominence of that counterclockwise direction as the proper direction of the zodiac. But he would forget that and get all incensed about any kind of counterclockwise movement. Okay, we all have our fixations. But here, what looks like counterclockwise to me, if I was on the other side and with a viewer, would look like clockwise, wouldn't it? Just imagine. The individual is on the other side, and here we're going counterclockwise. I am, but maybe it looks to you at the moment. What does it look like? It looks like we're going clockwise, doesn't it? In this image, and even though I'm going counterclockwise. So it's all a question of perspective, and when you are the all-seeing eye and can see in both directions simultaneously, or let's start there, the wheel is rotating on itself. It's going in 2 directions simultaneously, and when you can see from all angles, it's going in all directions simultaneously. So that is the synthesis of movement. Now we get into, we seem to have gone to the 3rd degree, but when we have such a name as the following, it seems we have entered the domain of the 4th. Points of light, these are monads, of the 4th progression. So does the idea of the 4th progression indicate the 4th initiation? Well, think about this rule. It's let the group together move the fire from the jewel in the lotus, within the jewel in the lotus, into the triad, and let them find the word which will carry out this task. Let them destroy by their dynamic will that which has been created at the midway point. When the point of attainment is reached by the brothers at the 4th great cycle of attainment, that's it. When the point of achievement is reached by the brothers at the 4th great cycle of attainment, then can this work be done. 4th great cycle of attainment, the 4th degree. So this is from Raised in Initiations, page 23, and, if we just look at it, go there directly, it's Rule 11, and here it is. When the point of tension is reached by the brothers at the 4th great cycle of attainment, then will this work be done. So let the group together move the fire within the jewel of the lotus into the triad. That's only done at the 4th degree. Excuse me. And then let them find the word which will carry out that task, the occult method of transference into, or translation into the higher ethers. Let them destroy by their dynamic will that which has been created at the midway point. So you kind of wonder, the movement seems to appear first, and then the destruction. And when the point of tension, necessary point of tension, is reached by the brothers who are approaching the fourth degree, then will this work be done? So maybe here, that's what we have. Types of monads passing through the fourth degree. Maybe. Types of monads passing through the fourth degree. As well, the fourth progression may refer to a developmental process in the fourth or synthesizing tier of petals leading to the fourth initiation. And maybe we should say, and inducing the contrary rotation, which shows as the wheel in dual contrary motion. Points of light of the fourth progression. I'm saying here that I think we're in the period of the fourth initiation, and basically he has been raising us, telling us about monadic types which have a type of demonstration all the way from the most primitive to what's looking like now released from the Egoic Lotus altogether. I'm saying here perhaps we cannot associate the 10th group exclusively with the unfoldment of the 10th petal. See, I've been going along in that way, thinking that, every group might relate to some petal or other progressively. I have been having the thought that each of these groups relates to the process of one of the petals. You see how we discussed that before with the Sons of Heavy Rhythm. Was that the fourth petal? And then when we had the fiery flames or something, the fifth petal, and the tertiary units of secondary fire, the sixth petal, and then the magnetic, whatever they were they magnetic flames? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to here, Treatise on Cosmic Fire, page 1081, and we have them right there. Magnetic flames. Well, I don't think that that's strictly seventh petal, nor do I think the positive sons of electricity is strictly eighth petal. Rotating units of the seventh order, that might have to do with the whole tier of 9, composite tier of 9 petals. Points of light of the fourth progression, it would be difficult to associate this only with the 10th petal. It sounds like we are entering definitely the unfoldment, rapid unfoldment of the synthesis petals. Interesting names, and one day we will know exactly the reason why these names are used, and the beauty of the divine plan will appear before us in the clarity that it cannot now appear. So perhaps we cannot associate the 10th group exclusively with the 10th petal. Perhaps it includes the unfoldment of all three, and I want to say here, synthesizing petals. Certainly, Buddhi is related to the fourth initiation, and the petals of synthesis are created by Buddhi, and their unfoldment is definitely related to the fourth initiation, but not, there's a process. It may all occur in one life, but there are stages. Well, electric sparks, it's such a monadic name. Sparks is, and the fire, electric fire signifies the monad, and so does the word spark. So it's a definite association with the highest fire, and with that which is found in the jewel in the lotus, I suspect. as we can imagine, association with the jewel in the lotus, which is an extension and expression of the true electric spark, which is the monad. The monad also is a jewel, and the jewel in the lotus is a lesser jewel than the jewel in the crown. The jewel in the crown of the planetary logos is the monad. A jewel in the lotus is an extension of that. Both are jewels. It's one of those little hints that you pick up, but the monad is the original jewel, probably 7-faceted and probably 12-fold. It probably has some 12-fold development and some 7-fold development, and then when you add the 3 and the 7 and the 12, you get the 19, and the 3 aspects of divinity will make the 22. So are these electric sparks liberated monads, or those in whom the influence of the monadic spark has become dominant, let us just say, in the egoic lotus? Our electric sparks, have they been lifted up at the 4th degree into the triad? So it seems difficult to relate this group exclusively to those in whom the love petal in the synthesis tier is unfolded, and solar fire is expressing at the 11th petal, and the term electric spark does suggest electric fire. So, I think we would find the limitation if we tried to take these names and go 1-to-1 for petals. There may be some indication, but electric spark seems to me that the innermost tier has burst open. Seems the innermost tier has burst open, revealing the jewel in the lotus, the electric spark. But of course, the real spark is the monad itself. So are we still within the confines of the egoic lotus? That's the question, because these groups of 13 developmental stages of the monad do not necessarily all have to take place within the egoic lotus, though perhaps they do. Units of negative resistance. Well, we may not at all here have the implication that this is low development. Resistance to what? So much depends upon that which is being resisted. So while the term negative resistance seems at face value negative and resistant to the evolutionary forces, we cannot be sure. There is a certain, connection with this, remember the inertia of spirit, the tendency of a thing to remain what it is, the tendency of a body in motion to remain in motion, the definition in physics, the tendency of a body at rest to remain at rest. Well, the tendency of spirit to remain exactly what it is. In a way, it's absolute inertia, because it will never change its being. Being is what it is, and it will be unresponsive to any attempt to change its being. It's impossible for being to change its nature. In that respect, it's utterly inert. So of these units, could these units could indeed act in a manner contrary to the evolutionary stream. However, the listing of these groups has seemed progressive, with the higher numbers indicating more evolved states, so I don't think we need to think of any devolutionary process. The resistance could be resistance to all that is negative and devolutionary. In other words, if there's an aberration and people peel off and go towards the left-hand path, I don't think it has to do with the type of monad it is, because many in the same monadic group will just continue to advance in their progress, while others may negatively choose something different. So that poor choice based upon egoism, ahamkara, negative promptings, is not related to the type of monad it is. So it seems certain, however, that we must find a way to distinguish them from the units of inertia. And I think that's it. It is in the same way that at the ninth initiation there is complete resistance and non-participation in the cosmic physical plane. At the ninth initiation there is complete resistance to the cosmic physical plane and rejection of it. This category may tell us something about the rejection of all that would pull a jiva into incarnation in the lower worlds. So it could be the resistance to negativity, or to that which is not in the real living body of the Solar Logos, but it is in his dense physical body, which is not a principle. But of course, he just doesn't say anything about these names. He leaves it to our intuition. So according to the ideas that come, we offer speculations, awaiting the confirmation of a fuller impact of intuition or the Master's word, explanatory word itself. And finally, this is interesting, the equilibrized atoms. It's very Libran in a certain sense, obviously. Every time you see the word equilibrization or equilibrium, very Libran. But there's no, and it's so interesting because, you have 12, there is some model here. The 12 petals of the Egoic Lotus and the 13th unit, which is the jewel in the lotus, and Christ in his ashram, the 12 apostles, and the Christ is the leader and the model of any ashram. As DK says, Christ exemplified for us the workings of an ashram. He was the 13th member, and the sun and the 12 signs of the zodiac is another symbol. But equilibrized atoms, let's see. So there is reason to believe that this 13th group indicates those who have an egoic lotus which stands in full revelation. Such an atom, i.e. a human monad, is an egoic lotus. In an egoic lotus, an atom, has completed one very important phase of the development and is equilibrized with respect to that phase. After this equilibrium has been reached, it is disturbed by various types of destructive forces. How is the causal body destroyed? From a number of lines of force, from those of the monad, from those of the Buddhic plane, the second aspect of the will, we're told, those from the tiny atomic units within the atomic triangle. Thus the causal body is destroyed. In any case, the term equilibrized indicates a completed phase of development, whatever that phase may be. And when harmony and equilibrization has been reached, destruction ensues. Harmony and equilibrization has been reached, then destruction. Like the relation between the fourth ray and the first ray. When all has been harmonized, beautified, and perfectly balanced, equilibrization, maybe it's equilibrization. Could it be? Oh, and maybe not. Well, let's try that. How about this? Equilibrization. Oh, well, I think you get the idea. Equilibrization, the balancing. When all has been brought to perfection, any other adjustment is toward imperfection. So that is the time to signal the end, the consummation. The fourth initiation is a destructive, consummatory moment. So the group of 13 may include those who have transcended the fourth degree, possibly, in which case enumeration according to the unfoldment of the 12 petals of the Egoic Lotus will not be fully accurate. It is a theory. It is clear at this point that in our occult understanding, interpretation, and meaning of these names must be speculative. Oh, yes, my sort of excuse here. But it seems to me that the full beauty of Libra, as a sign ruled by Venus, is demonstrated with the consummated Egoic Lotus, its full unfoldment, its greatest possible beauty. Harmony and equilibration. So that's the word. Okay. I don't have to say equilibrization. Okay. Equilibration has been reached. So it's ruled by Venus, the planet of beauty. And we may say, well, there is a maximal beauty possible for the egoic lotus, for anyone's egoic lotus. So we have the relation between beauty and death. And I think, it makes a lot of sense to me that the equilibrized atoms may be those in whom the egoic lotus is on the point of destruction. On the other hand, is it possible to have equilibrated atoms which show the monad in relation to the triad in relation in a particular way, because the triad is Libra and it is the balance. So it could be also, and I think I want to put this down, that since the triad is ruled by Libra, this could be a relationship existing between the monad and the liberated monad in extension or in projection. So it could be a monad triad relationship. But I do know that equilibrization or equilibration is needed before destruction. Until the fullest beauty possible is created, we cannot have the necessary destruction. So we have those thoughts in mind, and one day we will know with certainty. There are so many places where he just simply gives us a list. He gives us 7 formulas of healing, and he doesn't say much at all. And he oftentimes will put things forward from the old commentary and leave it for us to interpret. This is one of those examples. What do these names suggest to us? From what we know, what do they suggest? And then that which they suggest reaches out towards that which is the truth, and there will be a reconciliation. Many more names might be given, but these will suffice to indicate the general nature of these energy summations. And then, it's interesting. Let us pay attention to the term energy summations. It seems to hint that the groups are named according to the increasing degree of energy. They continue to sum, with the units of higher energy being listed later and those of lesser energy earlier. The earlier names would indicate lesser sums of energy and the later greater sums. Interesting. Indicate the general nature of these energy summations under which all members of the human family are gathered and placed according to. And then we discussed these 7 categories, beginning with rhythm and ending with activity. And there was a reference earlier to the 7-fold. How did it go? Well, I can tell right here if I go here, I think. Rotating units of the 7th order. Does that mean that all the 7 aspects have been fulfilled to a certain extent? Well, maybe. There's a point beyond which fastidiousness concerning knowledge is profitable, especially when we might be developing other very necessary qualities, while instead we search for the exactitude of a type of knowledge which cannot even be used. So we have to be practical about that, and sometimes understanding in general is the limit of what can be understood at a particular time. All these categories seem progressive. All are capable of increase, and the increase of each of the following, increase of rhythm, quality, heat, etc., 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 indicates an increase in evolutionary unfoldment. And this is interesting. This tabulation is but an extension of the major one, which grouped all egos under the division of color, sound, and vibration. And, what we're talking about, who are we grouping? I think we are grouping monads, which are manifesting through lotuses. The completely detached monad, which is not in the process of moving towards the taking of a lotus, is not our concern. So these inner charts, when will we see them? Their comprehensiveness and complexity must be extraordinary, but it's said between the third and fourth initiations, the amount of knowledge accumulated will be tremendous. Obviously, we're working in the synthesis petals, and we're synthesizing knowledge and other types of synthesis, the all-inclusive love, the all-directing will. So the 13 points we have been studying are only minor divisions when compared to the major divisions of color, sound, and vibration, or even, the major divisions, color, sound, and vibration. Always the 3 above the 7. We've just seen this tabulation of 7, is the subsidiary 7 to the 3 of color, sound, and vibration. Certain numerical occult structures simply persist, the 3 above the 7. It's in the tree of life, and it is operative. So the atoms of the kingdoms are possible as well. And even the Dayan Shoans in the highest rank find their place in the hierarchical archives of this 5th or 3rd. So the 5th or 3rd department. The classifications we've been dealing with are coming out of the 5th or 3rd department. And with the 5th, the number 5, we would expect all manner of minute classification. And perhaps for karmic purposes, or simply to know who one is dealing with, we seem to be studying classifications which appear in the Mahachohan's department, which has to do with karma and the exercise of capacity within the planes and subplanes within the material aspect, and would seem to be of use to the lords of karma and their multitude of karmic agents. We're told that they keep the most meticulous records. So he's telling us that all the members of all kingdoms and creative hierarchies are grouped in manners of this nature. Remember that every creative hierarchy has 7 stages of form and 9 stages of consciousness. And all creative hierarchies are monads, and not all members of all creative hierarchies are equally advanced. And we've been talking about the degree of development in time of the different monads that are in the creative hierarchy of man. So what a complexity it is. Of course, it's not our business, really, is it? I mean, the proper study of mankind is man, or the proper study of man is mankind. I think it's mankind is man. And we're concerned with understanding the variations of the types of human beings there are, so we can all work out the divine plan with correct understanding. If we understood the monadic and egoic objective of any human unit, perhaps we would be more tolerant and find facilitative ways to promote those fulfillments that did not disrupt the fulfillments of others. So there are other groupings in those other kingdoms and hierarchies. These other groupings can not be immediately useful to us, no. And when we cannot yet fathom the groupings of our own creative hierarchy. The term Daihan Shohan may point equally to those in both higher kingdoms, such as the kingdom of planetary lives, and also to those in the higher creative hierarchies, triads, divine builders, divine flames. So let's just say that what we see here is that minute organization prevails in the classification of numerous numerous groups of monads, high and low development. Groups of monads perhaps are involved in the group soul phenomenon, it would seem. The intricate relations between the kingdoms and creative hierarchies are especially difficult to unravel. I've sometimes talked about that, from a certain point of view, the animal, the plant, the mineral, they're all somehow the human monad. Because the human monad metallizes, vegetalizes, zoonates. So there is, it's as if all those lower kingdoms come under the fourth creative hierarchy from one perspective. Not easy to work out. And then there is a cyclic tabulation. Of course, the one that we've been working on here, it would seem, is almost the cyclic tabulation. A cyclic tabulation, well, maybe is of equal interest, but is of a totally different nature, carrying to the initiated, intuitive investigator many hints. Maybe this has not really been presented, but certain, in other words, a cyclic tabulation tells us when different groups of monads enter the human kingdom. And I don't think we really have that yet demonstrated in what has been given. But I would say that there are hints in both of the groups we have examined, in Program 19 and now in Program 20, of the relative times that the monads have entered. And I think there's lots in the foregoing list, which we shouldn't have studied first, but we did, which tells us about the time of their entry and what cycle they may be in. Not entirely, but to a degree. This has quite a bit of information about sources. But when it talks about points of lunar origin, we know something about the cycle. It's a much earlier cycle than others that have come in relation to our Earth chain and Earth globe specifically. And Vyasya was a very old teacher. It tells us something. The original Vyasya induced or made possible or helped to make possible the process of individualization, so it gives us a sense of when this type of monadic approach occurred. The Arhat, if the Arhat is the Buddha, then we know something about the time that they flourished. We don't know when they came in, but we have an idea that maybe, since the Buddha was from the moon chain, they too may have come from the moon chain and could follow his third ray, very high third ray presentation, touching on the cosmic mind. So we don't have a completely cyclic representation, but there are hints in these two lists of monadic name, origin, stage of unfoldment, quality, associations with various teachers. There are hints here which give us a sense of the cycle of entry, though, as I say, not complete. Well, this has been, I would say, quite an interesting subject. It is definitely related to the egoic lotus because according to the quality of the monad, its degree of unfoldment, and the cycle in which it entered, which will have something to do with the degree of unfoldment, so will be the unfoldment of the egoic lotus. And when we're looking at an egoic lotus, a master can tell in what monadic group it is and what monadic group is behind it. We wouldn't be able to tell. We'd simply look at the relative degree of unfoldment and say, aha, here is an initiatory sequence, and here are certain qualities which are demonstrating and other qualities which are not. We wouldn't really know the cause, or one of the major causes, behind the degree of unfoldment that we saw. We wouldn't know why it had unfolded as it had. Was it because of rapid or slow evolution? Was it because of an earlier or later cycle of entry? Was it because of a particular type of quality and origin? You know, like the monads that are coming in from Venus and Jupiter seem to be among the bulk of the second ray monads that we have to deal with. We still don't know whether the second ray monads are the majority on our particular planet. In our solar system, we know they are the majority. So many of these considerations about very high and remote causes are beyond our ken and will determine the degree of unfoldment of the egoic lotus and its emphasis of colors and its rates and vibrations and so forth. A huge science in which the solar angels, having had the advantage of one solar system on us, are proficient. They are divine alchemists, very proficient in all of these understanding of these processes, and so they can promote them in the proper way because they have to know what kinds of monads they are dealing with in order to promote in the proper way the type of egoic lotus unfoldment that is appropriate to that monad. So it's just like a science far beyond anything we can conceive as real. We can only imagine some of the factors that may be included in it. Well, you know, I always feel the sense of incompleteness when leaving a subject, and especially since it hasn't been rigidly organized, which I would like, you know, with everything completely said about it. Maybe my two weakest rays, the seventh and the fifth, would be what I would aspire to in any presentation. But let's, what I think we should do to close this is simply to sound the great invocation together. And that will close our 2-hour program. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. So, friends, this will mean that we have, in this sense, fifth department and seventh department. We were just looking at the fifth department and now the seventh. How interesting. All right, 5 and 7. Uranus and the two rays so closely related. All right, so this is the end of Egoic Lotus Webinar Commentary, Program 20, 2 hours, and, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah, let's say 2 hours and 1 minute, and it's Treatise on Cosmic Fire, page 1081, largely, and beginning of Egoic Lotus Webinar Commentary, Program 21, and maybe the first petal. We'll see whether I've done enough to warrant the beginning of the work on the first petal. So now you should have the foundation which would help us do that. We'll see if any other preparatory material is needed. So, friends, farewell, and we'll see you before long. Advancing in our understanding, hopefully. See you then. Bye-bye.